What happened a year ago cannot be considered a love story. What had possessed me that night was far from that feeling. It had been an overwhelming desire, a fire that had consumed every logical thought and had forced me to act on impulse. What I am about to tell involves my stepmother and the dark desire that made us give ourselves to each other on the day of her wedding to my father. For personal reasons, I will not reveal my name or the people involved. It all started when my father, after spending 5 years single after divorcing my mother, met a woman. I was much younger than him, and although my brothers and I disagreed with it, arguing that she was probably a fortune house, my father went ahead. And one day he invited us to lunch at his restaurant. My 3 older brothers had arrived a little late, so I was alone for 15 minutes. When they arrived and sat in an awkward silence, I didn't dare say anything for fear that my older brother would lose his temper. He was the first to cry out loud when my father told us that he had met a woman and that he was madly in love. For my brother, the love our father spoke of was his need to not be alone, that he couldn't really be in love with a woman who was old enough to be his daughter and not his wife. But after several discussions, my brother accepted. There was no turning back. Our father was marrying a woman we didn't know, and the only thing he expected from us was support and understanding. Attending the lunch meant one thing. We were willing to accept his new love interest, and if that meant raising a white flag in surrender, we would. My father arrived shortly after with the help of a monumental woman. She was young, yes, but his look told a different story. She had given each of us a confident look, as if he were assessing which of us would be an obstacle to her relationship, and the moment her eyes landed on me, I felt a lump in my throat. She was not only beautiful, but provocative. She was the kind of woman who would make you lose your mind, who would cause your whole world to collapse overnight. She was like a goddess, dressed in a red dress that foreshadowed bad things. On that occasion, we showed up without knowing what would happen shortly after. She spoke confidently as she introduced herself, and at no time did she let go of my father. They both seemed reluctant to part, and my brothers and I noticed it, in the way they looked at each other, touched each other, and smiled. Each gesture seemed to convey a resounding message. They loved each other and would do anything to be together. But when lunch was over and my father invited us for the weekend to the new house he had bought to live with her, the more I felt that something was not right. Maybe it was the way she looked at me, the shape of her provocative hips, or the youth that made me think she deserved more than a divorced man. During the months of preparations for their wedding, family gatherings became more and more frequent. My brothers were gradually distancing themselves, and my father did not seem affected. My mother, on the other hand, insisted that we couldn't take sides, that her thing with my father was over, and that we had to get over it. After all, life had given my father a second chance to be loved in love, and we couldn't be the stone in his way. So, as my siblings were fleeing the new family dynamics surrounding my father's marriage, my position as the youngest of the siblings put me in a situation with no escape. When I had free time, when I left school or on weekends, I accompanied my father as a representative of his family. His girlfriend was a focused and extremely articulate person, so it wasn't difficult to adjust to her, and I knew it had nothing to do with the fact that she would soon become my stepmother. I knew it was because of his attractiveness, the way he smiled at me, and the small age difference we had. She was only a year older than my older brother, which made her approachable. The months passed between preparations, uncomfortable family gatherings, and exams. Lately, I didn't have time for anything, only to study and wait for the next family gathering that I would be involved in, so as not to make my father feel bad. It was during that period of time that my future stepmother became the protagonist of my dreams. In them, she was mine. She was the owner of my thoughts and my body, and I was the only one who had the privilege of proclaiming her as mine, of possessing her. At night, when I fell into a deep sleep, I was transported to a world where the groom was me, and not my father. In those worlds, he would take her hand, kiss the corner of her mouth, like a man would do with his beloved, and make her laugh. In those dreams, she was the center of my universe. But when I woke up, the bubble burst, and the only thing that made me assimilate the magnitude of the thoughts I had been dedicating to her was the liberation I felt when desire overcame me in the mornings after seeing her how God brought her into the world in my dreams. Now, my future stepmother not only came to my mind during dreams, but in those moments when desire clouded my mind. During those moments, she had that raw emotion in her eyes when her eyes landed on mine. At first, I thought it was out of curiosity. Then, I thought it was because of the resemblance I had to my father. Of all my brothers, I was the only one who had characteristic features of him. So the idea didn't seem crazy to me. It wasn't until one day I accidentally stumbled upon it that I ended up discarding all those ideas. I had arrived at my father's house and went up the stairs to go to the room he had prepared for me. And as I was crossing a corner of the hallway, I bumped into my stepmother. From the impact, she fell forward, and I instinctively held her against me for support. "Are you okay?" I asked her, embarrassed. She nodded and slowly sat up. However, his hands lingered longer than necessary on my chest, and before leaving completely, they went down to my stomach in a strange caress that left me paralyzed. "You exercise a lot," she said, looking at my body. "Not so much," I dismissed, and she smiled in response. "Are you being modest?" she said with a much wider smile. "Of your brothers, you are the one who looks like a retaining wall." The joking tone made me relax, so I didn't hesitate to play along. "I guess someone in the family had to raise the bar, don't you think?" I said in the middle of a laugh. But suddenly, the atmosphere around us changed when the closeness of my future stepmother was no longer appropriate. "Yes, it's a good thing it was you," she whispered close to my face, her breath hot on my skin, causing me to shiver. After that day, things became strange between us. There was a tension in the air every time we were in the same room, and soon I began to pick up nonverbal cues from her. These signs were not typical of the relationship that united us. She didn't act like a stepmother was supposed to act, and part of her knew it had to do with her age. But then it started to become apparent that she was flirting with me. The looks, the enigmatic smiles as if he knew something I didn't, the way he always seemed to have an excuse to spend time with me, and how those opportunities were twisted by his attempts to close the distance I was trying to maintain. I wasn't stupid. I knew what she was doing, and it was wrong. In the presence of my father or brothers, my stepmother acted like a white sheep. She was sweet, assertive, and calm. I always had a gray opinion when the debates between my brothers and my father went from white to black. But then, when she and I were there, the innocent sheep costume was replaced by that of a ferocious wolf. She became irreverent, biting, and flirtatious. And after realizing that this change only occurred when we were alone, I began to think that if I didn't put a boundary between the two of us, I would soon become his prey. With each interaction, between heated glances and easy smiles, the thoughts I had about her began to take over my mind at the least expected moments. When I shared lunch with my father and her, I had to concentrate so as not to look like a hungry animal, salivating over everything she did. Every time he slowly brought the glass to her lips, as if she wanted to prolong the sensation of the liquid on her lips, or the flavor that went down into her body, my mind translated it as an invitation. An opportunity to cross the line that separated us and put an end to this tension that had me on the verge of madness. I had never met a woman as provocative as her, and what bothered me was that there was no way she was mine. She would be my father's wife. She would get an important role in our lives. She would be my stepmother for an unknown amount of time, and for a moment I hated her. I hated that she was banned, that her thing with my father was a fake. With every interaction I witnessed, it was evident that my father had only noticed one thing: her appearance, the way her body seemed designed to awaken the baser instincts of anyone with blood in their veins. And in the midst of my delusions of desire, the long-awaited day arrived. The wedding was in a luxurious hotel. My father had invited my mother out of courtesy, and my future stepmother agreed. My brothers kept complaining about the absurdity of the whole situation, but it was better not to think about it too much. After all, my mother would always be an important person in my father's life, and her marriage did not mean that I had to erase my mother's presence as if she had never existed. So, during the ceremony in the hotel's small chapel, we all gathered around the wooden altar while the authorized person carried out the civil marriage. At all times, I kept my eyes on the ground, not wanting to see her. But the moment the jury announced that they could kiss, I made the mistake of looking. The scene made my stomach turn. It was official. The woman who had taken over my darkest fantasies had legally become my stepmother. With sadness, I accepted it. Throughout the evening, I was next to my mother, and even though the party was incredible, my spirits were low. When the clock struck 2 in the morning, I snuck out of the lounge to smoke. The hotel had several terraces, and the one that faced the pool was right in the party room. The view was incredible, and the night breeze chased away the cloudy thoughts that didn't leave me calm. When I was going for my 3rd cigarette, someone came onto the terrace. I figured someone else had gone out to smoke, so I didn't turn to see who it was. But to my surprise, it was about her, the woman of my dreams and nightmares. "All good?" she asked in a whisper. The background music muffled the sound of my sigh. "Yes, everything is fine," I responded without looking at her. Silence invaded us for a while, until my stepmother broke it again. "I noticed you spent the whole night grieving," she said. "Is there something bothering you?" I shook my head, unable to open my mouth to respond to her. "Won't you tell me what's going on?" she insisted, but this time her voice sounded closer to my right side. She had gotten closer. "Everything is fine. There is nothing to say," I assured. "You say everything is fine, but you haven't looked at me all night," she said. "Did you think I wouldn't notice? I can't pretend I'm fine if I can't even ask the woman I like to dance," I expressed regretfully, the impulse to throw it all away beating in my throat. "Oh, really?" she asked with an incredulous ring to her voice. "I didn't imagine you were the kind of man who stops over small things. Anything goes tonight. The point is to enjoy the party. What stopped you from asking her to dance? Has a boyfriend?" "She just got married," I said, looking into her eyes for the first time that night. "And?" she asked irreverently. She raised an eyebrow, and the challenging look made her look incredibly attractive. "Didn't you listen?" I said angrily. "She just got married. It is forbidden for me." My stepmother smiled flirtatiously before telling me. "And matters? Rules are meant to be broken. Maybe she likes you too," she said in a whisper, as she got closer and closer to me. In that moment, I sent my sanity to a drawer in the depths of my head. I shortened the distance that separated us and verified everything I had imagined. My stepmother was an incredible kisser. It was like we were both pieces of a puzzle. Should I stop my feelings? Would I let my attraction to her lead me down a path of betrayal and guilt? The more questions I asked me, the more my stepmother's lips made me forget everything. There, on that terrace, a kiss was not enough. With the rumble of music in the background, the night breeze and latent desire, my stepmother and I immersed ourselves in dark waters, waters from which we did not know if we could emerge. The faster and more frenetic our moment of breaking became, the more frightened I was by the idea that we would never go back to what we were at that moment. Just a man and a woman who desired each other, who showed that desire can do wonderful things in the right hands. But like all good things, it ends at some point. And after one last kiss, we said goodbye with the promise of leaving what we had that night. A moment frozen in our memories, a memory that would only belong to the two of us. Let me know in the comments if you like my story. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video. Thank you very much, and we'll see you again soon.